Hello. There is a fake Chinese curse which says, "May you live interesting times." And the reason I say it's fake because there's no actual evidence that it originated anywhere in the Orient or anywhere near China. It's very likely to be a sort of English pearl of profundity, sometimes probably in the 19th century or something like that. Anyway, the point is that it suggests that interesting times are, by definition, tumultuous and troubling times. And boy, do we live in interesting times at the moment. And it provides for therapists that are involved in supporting the LGBTQI plus community. It also provides an element of insecurity, I find, and I'll explain why. Eric Fromm, who was a psychologist, suggested that the very basic human dilemma that we all ultimately have to deal with is the dichotomy, it's the interplay between freedom on one hand and security on the other. In other words, we would like to be secure in our needs being met, but at the same time, we like the freedom to pursue what we want to pursue. And we see this a lot in current societies where, for the sake of security, we perhaps accept a diminishing and increasing diminishing of our freedoms, which is a troubling trend. But the reason I say it's a bit insecure for someone who works with LGBTI community is because one of our core beliefs as allies and as therapists working with the community is that we need to encourage expression, and we really want to support our clients to be the best version of themselves and as congruent with their identity and sexuality as they can be. So where does that leave us now, where potentially to be openly something that our governments deems to be unacceptable? Hungary just banned Pride March. We're not even going to talk about what's happening in the United States. The UK recently had a so-called academic report came out with quite disturbing findings. So if I have a client that comes to me and says, I'm really struggling with gender dysphoria, for example, and I would like some support with this. Where does that leave me, in a sense? Now, I know I don't mean it like, here's the cis het white male, oh, it's all about me sort of thing. That's not what I mean. I mean, which is the way that I should best serve my client in this kind of freedom versus security scenario? Do I encourage my client to be as congruent with their true selves as possible? Or do I, for the sake of their security at the moment, say, we need to find a balance where you feel safe, where you can live your life in a way which you feel is possible for you, but at the same time you feel safe. So how do we better support them? Now, of course, the answer ultimately is with the client. They will guide us on in which way they think it's best for them. But ultimately, it is an interesting question, considering that so many members of the community are under threat at the moment, and the narrative is so toxic. Do we encourage them? Do we work on their freedom? Do we actually do our best for them to be as congruent as possible? Or do we want them to be as safe as possible at the same time? Or do we just work on a balance between the two? So I just thought this kind of idea about having to sacrifice one for the other, security for freedom, or the other way around, which in normal societies probably shouldn't be. I think ultimately it's something that we all struggle with these days. So I just thought that that was an interesting point to make, and I think it's worth pursuing. So think about it in your own lives. Some of the issues that you are confronted with, maybe some anxieties you might have, is that because of this interplay of freedom versus security? It'll be interesting to find out. Have a good rest of the week.